Well, hey everybody, it's HeapCVA. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another episode of Old Firehouses. I love doing these things, let me tell you. Where are we at now? We are in the city of the Dalles in the state of Oregon. And let's look at a map real quick so I can kind of give you an idea of whereabouts we are as compared to everybody else in the U.S. or on the planet for all that matters. Hang on. So this map, courtesy of Google, is of a portion of Oregon and a portion of Washington State. And you can see Portland and Vancouver over on the left. And the blue line that goes from the ocean inland until it makes the big curve and goes up is the Columbia River. It's a huge river. And it is the de facto border between Oregon and Washington. And Dalles, just happens to be on the Columbia River about 85 miles east of the city of Portland, which I believe is the state's largest city. Not their capital, that's in Salem, but still their largest city. So let's zoom in a little bit so we can see a little more detail on where the Dalles is. So here we are looking at the Dalles, and you can see it's in a bend of the river 85 miles away from Portland. So it's not too far away from the big community, but it's kind of off by itself. Most of the cities that are in this area are very small. Some are not even cities, they're towns, etc., in a very rough terrain type of area on the northern border. Actually, the landscape in the general vicinity is pretty cool to look at by itself. But this is a large river. The Dalles is on the south side of the river in Oregon. It's got its own power plant on the river. Pretty significant history-wise. And let's have a look at one of the reasons I would come all the way off the beaten path to stop at this place versus like Portland or one of those other places on our trip back down south. So like you saw in the first photograph, this is the combination building, combination City Hall and Firehouse in the Dalles. And let's talk about the building in general for a second. Historically, it was built in 1908. Cost about $30,000 in 1908 to build a building of this stature. Doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but it was back then. And its purpose, as it still is, with the exception of the firehouse, is to house the city hall, the city the city employees. Just pretend I didn't do that other thing. Wow. In addition to housing the fire equipment. I do know that in addition to this building, or before this building was built, there was another firehouse that existed on this same street. This is 3rd Street that you're looking at right here, where the fire apparatus doors face. And where the front door of the City Hall faces is Court Street. The original firehouse was on 3rd Street too. I just don't know where on 3rd Street it was. We just know that it was in the old part of town because there's a couple of photos of it online. And like I have in all of my videos, I'll provide you links in the descriptions below. So why isn't that building still around? About 1891, this city suffered a significant fire. And while there's no documentation that says the firehouse burned down, there is a picture of what's left after the fire. And it's not a pretty sight. And I'm guessing that if it was anywhere in the old downtown where the rest of the buildings burnt down, that it got caught up in it. And so obviously funding wasn't as easy to get back then. It probably took a little bit of time. I'm thinking, and there's no hard date for that fire, but somewhere around the 1890s, early 1890s. And it probably took a couple of years to generate the revenue and get the loans or whatever they had to secure to build another building. It's significant for me because that older wooden building had probably been around a while. This fire organization has been in existence since 1859. So it is really old as small organizations go. From the pictures I've seen, they were very well equipped, had some hand-pulled fire equipment, and it looks like, judging by later photographs, that the equipment survived that significant fire. And out of all of that came this building with the side of the, some combo City Hall firehouses. It's almost impossible to see from a distance what it is because the doors are so plain and nondescriptive. Compared to this, which screams out at the top of its lungs, Firehouse, DFD Firehouse, here, right here. And it caught me as being one of the nicer combo buildings that I had seen. And I haven't seen them all. I haven't even seen a quarter of them. But I can tell you that this is on the shorter list of buildings that are really nice, really nicely built, very well kept for its age, and the firehouse is as much a center point of the building as the entrance to the City Hall. This building is all original, even the stucco is original. That's the way they used to do it back then. Stucco isn't as popular. Usually these buildings were brick through and through, and there may be brick behind that stucco, but then it has that specific Oregon type of coloring to the brick itself, and then a Grecian Revival molding put at the top of the wall to kind of demonstrate a roof line, even though it's a straight up and down roof line with a step down on the back side of it. But it just makes the building stand out all the more from all the buildings that would have been around it in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So as we look at the firehouse itself, it looks like a regular firehouse that would be built and standing on its own in some city somewhere that they kind of slid into the back of this City Hall because it sticks out a little bit. It's got its own window set. It's got its own roof line, and the doors definitely stand out with the big DFD in the arches over each door. Very cool. And I'm glad I got to come see it. So let's walk down the street and let me give you another perspective on the firehouse part of this building. So as we look at this perspective, I'm standing across the street still. I'm trying not to get run over because I'm standing on the curb, and trying to shoot over the traffic because this is a very busy street because it ties into a highway, and get you a good shot of the front of this building. And I hope you're pleased, as I am with it. The sun is shining over the top of my head towards the building. You can see the architectural extras that were put on the top, the red brick, the stucco that is inside of it, the arches with the DFD, the significant doors for the firehouse, which are just as they were the day the place was built, the entry door to the left, and the arched windows above the apparatus rooms. Very, very nice firehouse. Wow. Is all I can say. Even now, after I've left there and it's been a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I love coming back to this picture, I got to tell you. And so let's move on around. And my goal is to cross the street and not get run over by a car. So let's slowly work our way to the other side of the street. Whoa, hold on. Before we walk down the street, it dawned on me that we should get a close-up of the DFD insignia on this building. Because as I've been telling you in the other videos I did, I'm always looking for the thing that sets one building off from another so they all don't look the same, and what's specific to one jurisdiction. And as I looked at this building from all sides, the DFD and the way they installed it on what looks like keystones in the arches screams out to me that this is the focal point for this particular building. And so we've zoomed in on it. Those are hand-painted letters that have been there from the day the building opened, which is a feat in and of itself. I'm sure it's experienced a lot of upkeep over time because it's out in the elements and everything else, and it looks just as good today as it did back then. So I just wanted you to see this a little closer so you could see the letters. And while we're zoomed in a little bit, we can see that the windows frames and everything look pretty old. They could even be originals. They're all wood sash and stuff like that. The windows that are set underneath the archways look about right. And the windows in the doors, you know, you can never tell if there's original glass in there or not because that's what's going to break more than anything else is going to. But usually over time, the wood in the windows will go away if it's not protected from the elements. And so to see these here and that they're still hung and functioning really says a lot about the care that this building's getting. So now, as I misstated before, let's zip across the street to the other side. Okay, so I made it across the street without getting squashed flat. Thank goodness for the traffic light down the block to keep me from getting nailed. And when I took this picture, I don't have a good explanation of what I was going for other than that perspective view. Obviously, I didn't catch enough of the building in it. So my excuse is going to be is that I wanted a closer shot of the DFD keystones in the arches and to look at the doorway construction underneath that. And we'll go with that. And, you know, what can I tell you? So let's look at the DFD thing real quick. I originally from across the street thought that they may have actually used a stone keystone in the arches. As I look closer, that's not the case here at all. Now, I'm not upset, and I'm not talking down about this building at all. It's just that this isn't a complete keystone. It looks to me, and it actually probably took almost as much work, where they like plastered over the brick. They added some brick on the front of the arch brick to create it to stand out a little bit so they could kind of to plaster in the grout joints and create a smooth surface that they could paint the initials on. And that they did this in 1908 and it looks this good today with these letters on it screams that this was work well done. The casement for the windows in the arches, definitely a big, thick piece of wood holding those frames and that small glass together. And then the header over the doors, the big, big black metal hinges for those doors, just screams to me heavy door. Now, do I know that for a fact? No. I have looked at them fairly close, and they look like pretty good-sized doors. Look like they're pretty heavy. Not like some of the doors we've seen that have a thinner door that isn't very hard to open and close and wouldn't stand up well to a big, strong wind or something like that. These doors are significantly built and meant to carry a lot of weight and thickness for strength. So let's switch around here a little bit. So I'm standing underneath the shade tree because it's hot outside when we're here. It's in the 90s. And I was looking to see the side of the building because I told you I try to get all the sides I can. And there isn't much to look at on the side. There is a window up there, but because of the trees, it would have been blocked. But my wife says, I'm going to go down here and see what's down here and see if there's anything to see because we were talking about the photos of the other two videos that I did and how I didn't get enough close-up shots of either building to show you more details. I stood at a distance to take the bigger picture photos, but I didn't get closer to show you the details. So I wanted to make up for that in this video, but try to keep the video fairly short. So we were checking things out, and she was being my scout and helping me out. She liked the building as much as I did. And so you can see a little better how the building is kind of stacked on the large black color. That's not painted. That's actually that color of rock that they've chiseled into that configuration to be the bottom set, and then brick was probably set on top of that. Then it was stuccoed to hold it in place, and the corners are a trim for the stuccoed building. But it's a significant building. I mean, it's definitely sturdy. But, you know, she was doing that, and I wanted to catch some other photos while I still had the chance, because we didn't have a ton of time to spend in the Dalles, at least not nearly as much as I would have spent if I'd had a whole day to do this. So let's swing it around just 10 feet to look at the old door, which I'm going to say it's pretty close to original. It may not be the first door that was hung there, but it's pretty old. And just judging by the paint on it and the fact that they've already patched the one center panel, maybe even the one above it, it's been there a while. So this would have been the entrance when the volunteers would go through before the big doors were opened. And notice above, and I'm taking a picture of this with every firehouse that I take a picture of, the red light over the door, which is a tradition in the fire service. Even back then, like I said, the volunteer fire department's been around since 1859. So I don't know when we decided that this was going to be a thing, but I'm going to take pictures of them everywhere I see them. And so this one's showing up on this door on an older fixture, but probably not from 1908, with a brand new fluorescent light bulb in it that's colored red for the red light for the firehouse. I'm thinking that the window is old. It's definitely old enough to be vintage because it's the wavy type of glass that was made way back when instead of the machine-made plate glass that you see now. So the other thing you can see from this photo is those size of those hinges on that door to the apparatus room. Those are big hinges. They're made to hold some weight. I don't know that isn't a piece of steel that those are screwed into and then into the lumber. I'm not 100% sure. Another thing I've got to think of to add to my list of things I need to do is to knock on that stuff to see if it's wood or something else and how that's standing. But you can see how deep the window is inset in that door. That tells me the door's pretty thick. So let's continue our little tour of the outside of the building. And here we come around the corner to where the sun is on my left now instead of at my back. And notice that the sun changes the color of the brick a little bit. Now I did Photoshop, focus, and color correct, but I didn't touch to make the red any more specific than what it was originally. I took some of the shadow out, but that's about it. So a lot of this is just natural color to the brick and the architectural work that shows, again, that Grecian revival roof line that's demonstrated there in front of the wall that's behind it. But this is the front door of the City Hall on Court Street. You can see the word City Hall in the stucco just above the porch where the front door is. There's a little standing podium out that door out the second floor. In my mind, I envision somebody like a mayor coming out on there and giving a speech to the citizens as they're standing in the street back when it was safer to do that. You didn't get run over by a truck. The building is excellent condition, it's very nice looking. The lights on both sides of the front door are originals. The City Hall words that are on that piece of glass above the front doors down in the first floor, that's gold leaf, maybe original gold leaf. Used to be a thing, especially in the early or late 1800s, early 1900s, back when, it was a demonstration of, some expense being spent on a building to have gold leaf used anywhere as part of signage. So as we look at the building, it has an upper floor, the first floor where the stairs go up to the front door. And if you look down to the right, you'll see the bars on the windows for what I would call the basement of the building. So it does have some part of a basement. How big it is, don't know. Couldn't get into that part of it because it's a city hall still, and some of that stuff is not for the public to go rambling around in. It's none of my beeswax. So let me move down to the right a little bit and show you the final side of this building. So over here, I keep changing perspective with the sun. So now it's reflecting off my lens, and it created that red sun flare that you can barely see on the second floor. The architectural treatments, that what looks like a Grecian roof line. I don't know what materials they use for that. Definitely has that orangish red color to it. Certainly don't know from black and white photos what the original color was, but it seems to me that everything has pretty much been original so far on this building, so it wouldn't shock me that that's original as well. And so from this perspective, we are looking down the alley, which has always been an alleyway, to see some parts, especially on the first floor, that may have been added on later. There's nothing to tell me whether that's true or not. That's over behind the firehouse. Do I know if that was part of the firehouse or not? No. And it's not listed in the museum as anything specific. You can see the stairways. One goes downstairs to the basement, which is the first set of stairs. The second set of stairs goes up to the first floor. And then you've got these other extensions down the alleyway. Of note, and it's something that I missed when I took the picture, and I didn't see it until I blew the picture up a little bit to see more detail, is there's a siren in the upper part of the roof line on the farthest right corner down the alleyway to alert the volunteers of a call to come to the firehouse. That I will tell you, it's not likely to have been installed in 1908 because I don't believe many organizations had a siren back then. Most of them used bells or other methods. A lot of those were installed in the 40s and 50s, especially different makers. But I'm surprised that it was there because I missed it in the original photo. And when I was standing on the street, I didn't see it. And I'm glad that I got to call it out and let you guys know it was there. That tells me that at least the fire department was there until the 50s, well into the 60s, but I just don't have a date of when they moved out of this building, probably when they started buying taller fire apparatus, to be honest with you, and moved into another facility, because there is another fire station down the road a ways on 8th Street that I can't tell you what age it is. The Dalles Fire Department got absorbed by another fire organization in 1995. So tough to find info and not easy to get a lot of it online so far. I keep looking and I'll continue to look at that. But, for the point of this video, I didn't get what I was looking for as far as more information. So normally this is where I would say this is another old firehouse. Hope you liked it. And I would move on to close the video. But you notice my wife didn't follow me around the building. And I found out why when my phone went off and she sent me a text that said, "Come back to the other door. I want to show you something." And I assumed that she wanted to show me, maybe she got into the building. Somebody had let her in to see the inside of a building, which is one of my things I've been trying to get to do on some of the old buildings I've been to show you not just the outside, but the insides as well, wherever I could. So let me show you what she found. And if you got this far in my video, congratulations and thank you so much for hanging out. I hope to make it worth your while in the next few minutes. So I come in the door of this building, and this is the look to my left, and my jaw must have hit the floor. My wife had been standing there waiting patiently for me. She'd already looked around. The city of the Dalles has created this fire museum in the one bay of the old firehouse for the purpose of always being set up this way to show everybody a glimpse of what the building looked like a long time ago. So this is the left wall, which would have been the rear of the fire apparatus bay, which is a lot of photographs, as you can see, from left to center, and some displays in little cabinets like that old fire chief's helmet, which is the helmet, I believe, for the guy standing in the photograph. There's some pictures of the firehouse in its very, very earliest state, like the one right above the helmet. That's a small picture of this building in the early 1900s with the volunteers standing there with hand-pulled fire equipment. This is before motorized vehicles. And that's some of the equipment that was used out of this firehouse. Great display. That is not it. So let me swing around and show you what's on the other side. All righty. Here we go. I had to go around this thing in the bottom of the picture, which you saw the other side of it as I looked at the photographs. That's a bench that's in the middle of the floor. Here is looking out the door towards 3rd Street. And when I saw these two pieces of fire equipment here, I just couldn't say a word, because I know old firehouses are a favorite of mine, but old fire apparatus is neck and neck with it, and I was just in heaven seeing this stuff. I was so happy, but sad, because I knew I didn't have a ton of time to spend looking at all of the detail of both of those units over a big period of time. What it does, though, is say I got to go back to the Dalles and have another look later on. It's open every day from 8 to 5, and it's free to enter. And so if you're in the neighborhood, I strongly recommend you check this out. So what do we got here that's not part of the firehouse itself? We've got two pieces of equipment. The one on the left is a hand pumper, which is powered strictly by muscle of how many people could hold on to each end of the arms that tilt back and forth like a teeter-totter that actually pump pistons to create pressure to squirt the water out of nozzles or short sections of hose. And it was drugged to the fire by the firefighters running to the call. Can you imagine how tired you'd be before you ever got an opportunity to squirt water on a fire? The unit on the right side is a steam fire engine, which, in my opinion, they are very hard to find. A lot of them didn't live very long. When steamers were in their heyday, they were revered across the country, but when we got into motorized fire apparatus, these fell onto hard times and were sold or gotten rid of somehow actually pretty quick. Now, the hand pumper was purchased by the Dalles Fire Department. So it's been there since it was brand new in 1862. The steam fire pumper on the right-hand side, or fire engine, was built in 1879 by a manufacturer that a lot of fire apparatus buffs would know, and I pronounce it as Amoskeag, A-M-O-S-K-E-A-G. They built a lot of steam fire apparatus across the United States. One of several of what I consider the big manufacturers. Now, how big is this steam fire engine? This is known as a what I would call a third class or third size. And that's the charting that they use to tell you whether it was the biggest that they make or the smallest. And I believe it goes 1 is the largest to 5 is the smallest. And I don't think there's a 6 or bigger than that. In my experience, I've never seen one smaller than a size 5. Not a kid's shoe, but as a fire pumper. So this is a third class or third size, which means it could be pulled by horses, or if you had enough men, you could pull by manpower. Can you imagine the amount of work that went into this every time the alarm went off, whatever they used, to get this? These are very, very heavy pieces of equipment. Now, I could spend an hour talking to you about each particular piece of equipment, but we're here to see the firehouse. But I couldn't not tell you about this because, like I said, I wasn't expecting this at all. I just figured I was going to get to see the inside of the old building, what was left of it after the rest of it was converted into offices for the City Hall. They've saved this one bay, and as you look to the left, that's the center bay, and then there's another one to the left of that are office spaces. What they did, though, is they created a wall inside a wall so that the original door was left intact. From the outside, you would have no idea that there's an office built on the other side of that door. And that's part of the beauty of this particular building is it's so well cared for, and the exterior look is so important to them that they did these extra things to make it the way it is. So let's talk more about the old firehouse because I'm running on time and I didn't want to go too long, but I wanted you to see this little surprise that I got for this particular old firehouse. That's the original flooring you're looking at, which is a hardwood floor using a slat technique, and then they use a wider board, and that's where the wheel tracks are for a given piece of fire equipment. Now, as you can imagine, the hand-pulled hand pumper probably didn't follow those tracks, but it's not as heavy as the steamer on the right, which is, that's all it is a boiler on wheels with a pumping mechanism on the front of it. But the heaviest thing on there besides the frame, which is probably cast iron, is that boiler itself. It is a monster heavy thing to try to move around, even on its best day with horses. The size ones that you see in New York City or FDNY, some of those had some huge 3-horse hitch configurations to get those steamers to a fire. So anyway, original flooring, original stairway to the second floor. Pretty much everything is as it would have been if you came here in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s, stood at the back and looked out through the front doors out onto 3rd Street. So let's look at the floors a little closer. And I also want to look at those doors a little closer because you see some hardware on the inside of these apparatus doors that is not unique, but I don't remember if I've ever seen it more than once in all the time I've been looking at fire stations for 30 some odd years. So let's go around this bench here and have a look. So as we look down at the flooring here, you can see the hardwood. Obviously, it's got some heavy wear on it, staining, but you can see that track where the wider boards are. And if you follow them out the door, you can see about the width of whatever size apparatus was in this bay at that time that these boards, which probably have been replaced at least once in the life of the building. Maybe not, but probably so. Some of the boards have been replaced. So they could shift these based on the smaller boards to move them out as apparatus got wider. And so they're in as good a shape as any I've seen. Most buildings of this age usually got the wood boards replaced with concrete if the building was still in service. I would say much like the Moscow, Idaho one, although I don't recall having a picture of the flooring in there, so I can't tell you for sure. If it was wood, It definitely had been replaced with fiberglass. Oh my gosh, concrete somewhere along the lines to hold the weight. I mean, fire apparatus just gets heavier and heavier. It's 5 or 6 tons now. So for just a pumper, you don't even get me started on a truck company or something bigger. So anyway, the big black stain in the middle, if you line it up with the center of the door, I'm saying that over time, a lot of the fire apparatus just leaked oil and leaked fluids because none of the seals for the engines or the transfer cases or the transmissions had 100% sealing on where their fluids were stored. And so it would leak over time. They always leaked water. You spill stuff and it just soaks into the wood. And so it adds character to that flooring. I like it. So before we move on and we look up slightly from the flooring, you look at that door and you can see there's something going on here that I am guessing at because there's no documentation that I can find online to describe it to me in detail. We're going to guess, and maybe some of you might actually have an answer that you would like to share with the rest of us in the comments below. If you do, I'd really appreciate it. So let's move on a little bit further down to the backside of this apparatus door. So we're standing next to the hand pumper with a lot of its original equipment. That's the lovely thing about owning something from the day you bought it, is almost all the stuff is still where it was. And that's, like I said, that's a whole class just by itself. But let's look at these doors for a second. You know they're thick. And they have pretty good size hinges on them. But they have this unusual spring device in the center of the doors that spans the door from the jamb to the center. And if I was a guessing man, I'm not a betting man, but I'm a guessing man, is that you notice that the locking mechanism for the left side door is on a handle and it pushes rods both up into the top of the door frame and down into the floor to lock the left side. And then there's a rod on the right side door that just locks that side of it. And there may be something in between the two doors to lock the two doors together so you couldn't pry them open. Not that that would happen, but I'm just saying that. So let's picture ourselves coming in, and we know we're going to go to a fire response, and we come in and we got to open the doors to get the fire apparatus out. And I can tell you from looking at the pictures of this building, even back into the teens, this system was on these doors. So these are likely the original ones. So my guess is you push up on that handle on the left side door that'll unlock those two rods, and you pull the small rod off the right door, and that unlocks the doors. And so they probably start to move a little freely at that point. And then you either push them or they move on their own from spring pressure, from those springs that are mounted to the door jamb, which are probably under tension, to open those doors out because they open to the street. And then they go so far, and then that rod that spans the door gets to that piece that's in the middle, almost to the center of the door, where the spring is at the end of the rod, to stop the travel of the door so it doesn't go over its intended travel path and hit the door to the left, because there would be a door for the apparatus room or bay that's to the left of this one. So the doors would crash into each other. So it's either stopping it from overextending or helping it open a very heavy door and stay open so that the wind didn't blow it or somebody bump into it or whatever, because the wind does blow in this area because of the river. It could accidentally shut an unassisted door, maybe shut it on a piece of fire equipment and damage something or hit a firefighter or whatever. So like I said, it's just an unusual thing. I haven't seen many of them. I'm pretty sure that they've used these type of door configurations in non-fire department settings as well, like, automotive or carriage works and stuff like that, where they need to open the doors like this. Because even carriage works had similar fire house type of doors on them in some places, like if they were having horses pull those wagons or something like you see in Charleston for tours. that might have been an old firehouse at one time, but it was easy to turn it into a horse carriage works because the horses had pulled the original fire apparatus out of that building anyway. So anyway, you see this, and it's unusual, so I wanted to make sure you got a picture of it because, like I promised you, I'm trying to get detail shots of the old firehouses, and this is one of those details. So I hope you like it, and I hope that it was nice to see something you haven't seen in one of my previous videos or anything that you've seen in your trips looking for old firehouses. So as I'm walking back out the door, I got to get one more shot of this steam fire engine. One of my favorite things. And you notice it's got a name on the back of it, and it's referencing the Jackson Fire Company. And a lot of city fire departments, even New York, their original fire companies had their own names, but they might have done work for the city under a big umbrella employer, but they had their own name set originally. And so this was the Jackson Steam Fire Engine Company or Fire Company. I noticed that the original hand pumper is named Jackson too, so this was put in service first by the same company, and then when they purchased this later, which I don't see anywhere where it tells me how much it cost, but I can tell you it was 6,700 pounds weight-wise. And if you know what, how many pounds in a ton, you know that this is a pretty heavy dude. So I just wanted to take one more picture of that on the way out the door. So we get to the end of this video finally. I really appreciate if you stuck it out long enough so you can see what I was talking about, that I hope it was worth your while to be patient and see the end of this thing and see what was at the end, as opposed to one of my normal videos. This was a one-off. I'm trying harder to get detailed photos of these old firehouses where possible, and we got so lucky with this one here, plus that museum that's inside of there, and I have all the links down below so that you can get information on it as well. So here's an older picture of the building when there was 3 companies out of it. You can see the door hardware right exactly about where I told you that I would expect it to be. Of course, I actually looked at the pictures before I talked to you, so I already knew that answer, right? So this is a good place to close the video. Thank you so much for coming by my channel. Hope you like this. If you did, let me know in the comments. Or if you got or suggestions or questions, I'm looking for anything and I'll respond to them right away. If you don't have anything to put in the comments, no big deal. If you can give me a thumbs up if the video made sense and was good, or a thumbs down if something didn't work, made a mistake or something else, and let me know what the mistake was. I'll do my best not to make those mistakes again. Hope you guys are having a great day, great evening, wherever you're on the planet. Hopefully everything's going your way. You're getting to do what you want to do. You know, and I know we're going to see each other in another video. So wish you the best for the rest of the week. Looking forward to the weekend coming up. We're already past the middle of the week, man. The weekend is coming, and I'll see you soon. You guys take care.